Heartist and welcome back to Art at Heart. Today we're diving into spooky season and making some Wizard of Oz magical trees. These are kind of the cursed apple trees that you see when Dorothy and Scarecrow get hungry and want some apples. So I'm going to show you how to make this lovely lawn ornament, or as I'm using it for, a trunk or treat event. Let's go ahead and get started. So first you're going to need to snag a couple pool noodles. I got mine from the dollar store. I got 4 exactly. Now I got these because there was the Halloween pool noodles out. I know at this point they probably don't have any more at the Dollar Tree, but you should be able to find these, I would think, at like Walmart or Target. Anyways, for the gluing of these 4 pool noodles, I used rubber cement in between 2 pool noodles, and then I rubber band them together. Then you'll need to glue the other 2 together as well as attaching all 4 together. I ended up using E6000 glue in addition to the rubber cement. Next, we are going to get out our X-Acto blade to create that tree bark effect by cutting out small segments of the noodle. I like to start with an almond shape and then do some curves around it to kind of get that knotted tree bark feel. You can also do some straight lines and some slightly curvy lines. I didn't draw this out ahead of time. I kind of just free-handed it, which I think works the best. I had never carved out of this particular kind of foam. It is rather messy, so just be prepared for that. I would recommend carving at a slight angle. This will make removal so much easier. And if you can avoid it, I would recommend getting a pool noodle that is not the color white. It was so impossible to see what I was carving on that. I ended up cutting myself. So if you can get a colored noodle, that is preferred. Make sure you are not cutting all the way through the noodle because it'll be a pain in the butt to paint all the way inside the noodle. So here I am reinforcing it with that E6000 glue because it was just not staying together like I liked. Wanted to apologize in advance for this awful lighting. I filmed these on different days and I don't know why this one's so bad. Anyway, we are taking foam clay, which a lot of cosplayers use to make the face of our magical Oz apple tree. And right now we're working on the nose. I wanted it to be really pointy and kind of angular looking. I just kind of pressed the foam into the pool noodle so I wouldn't have to attach it with glue. Now you can also attach it with glue if you want, but I think it's pretty sturdy after the paint and everything else goes on. Don't be afraid to crumple up the nose you have and start over. I definitely had to do this a couple of times until I got a nose that I was really satisfied with. I'm also using a clay tool, which isn't necessary. As you can see, I vastly changed the nose in this shot. But, you know, I figured each tree is going to have a different personality. So if you want to shape the nose differently than how I did, go for it. Now we're doing the eyes. So I just started off with 2 little balls for the pupils, and then I'm doing kind of heavy lidded eyes with baggy under eyes just to give them kind of that I haven't slept in 100 years kind of vibe, and because it was going to be excessively hard to attach just that circle by itself because the eyelids are what is holding it down. I really encourage you guys to play around with the face, get super creative, give your tree a different expression or emotion, give them a pudgy big nose or exaggerated lips. Anyway, for this side, how the pool noodle was sitting, I needed to add some foam clay to give that pupil a base to actually sit on. So that is what I'm doing here, and that foam stayed great. This foam clay comes in a lot of different colors, so honestly, if I could go back, I might go with a black just because I was painting the tree a deep brown and it probably would have used a whole lot less paint. Onto our very whimsical mouth. So for this guy, I wanted him to kind of be almost like a puckered, slightly ajarred lip. Almost like he's just about to start yelling or singing at you. The only dilemma is you don't know which. Okay, then I wanted to add a slight forehead so we could blend the pool noodle with the foam noodle, which is what I did here. Now for the painting of our tree, I had to invest in a lot of brown paint. So I ended up getting like 3 things of different shades of acrylic brown paint. I would not recommend trying to mix your own brown. I've tried to do that so many times and it always just looks awful. But yeah, I just got a couple of different paint jars from Joann's. If you can, I would recommend getting like a big container because I ended up using up a good portion of one of those larger ones that you could get for like a classroom or something like that. I would recommend maybe using a brush you don't care a lot about just because getting in the crevices are really hard, or you could get one of those sponge craft brushes, might be better for this kind of process. Or even using a smaller paintbrush to get in those crevices, but I will say you usually have to do a couple different coats, especially in those interior parts, which really sucks. The painting process takes a while, guys, and you have to wait for it to dry to do the next side. Also, I would recommend waiting to add like accent colors until the thing is fully painted because I started to try and like mix and match some colors and it just, the sheer amount of space I have to cover with paint, I just kind of gave up and fixed that later after it was all kind of like a closely solid brown. For his arms, I just took a full-size pool noodle and cut it in half. And then we're going to string some wire through that to make it bendable and so we can stick it directly into his body. So here I am with that wire. I just kind of cut off the top and then wrapped the wire around the top of his arm so it was secured. And then I also later went in with some E6000 glue to glue them down so they were more structurally sound, as well as sticking some extra wiring kind of at the joint of where the arm attaches to the body. Now getting the glue to stay in place is a little bit trickier because you can't rubber band this because of how long the arm is. So my solution was to hold it in place for a fair amount of time, as long as I could, and then I propped it up on some books that I didn't care about just in case the glue got on them. If you don't have that, you could try like a magazine or a stack of newspapers, which I know some people don't have that either. Now we're going to add some shading and more character to the face. I opted to paint his eyeballs brown just because it was going to be easier, but I'm going to go back in and make them white. I'm just kind of adding some accent browns, giving him a little bit of highlighter on his nose, doing some contour. So sometimes blending with a paintbrush is a little tricky, so I like to sometimes go in with my finger to help blend it out a little bit more, kind of take off some of the paint so it like the browns blend a little better, but you don't have to do that. But I like getting a little messy. I always seem to find paint in the most random spots after doing a craft. Just giving him a little shine on the very tip of his nose. This color ended up being a little too bright, so I took some of it off, but it kind of just like, it's like, hey world, here I am. This is my nose. See, I told you we were going to make the pupils white. We can't have no brown eyes. I mean, people do have brown eyes. We can't have the whites of our eyes being brown. You can have brown pupils. I'm a brown pupil girly. Once again, adding even lighter brown that I then blend into darker brown. But that's just kind of sometimes how you have to do it. Um, so feel free to experiment. Then I decided to kind of give his nose a little bit of the bark feeling that the rest of his body has by kind of making it a little more streaky looking. I felt like the inside of his mouth wasn't standing out enough, so I added some black in there. But then the black felt a little too dark, so I lightened it to a dark brown. Same with the nostrils. Gotta make those holes for him to breathe out of, I think. I don't know. How does that work? I also gave his lips kind of that textured, streaky look to match with the bark. For his pupils, I was really debating between red or green because either way it would match the leaves or the apples. Uh, but I thought the red was probably a little too creepy. Since this is for a trunk or treat event for kids with special needs, I opted for the green. Plus, you can never go wrong with a green eye. I think green eyes are so pretty, so that's what we went with. I did end up incorporating a couple different shades of green to give the eyes just a little bit more depth to them. I don't know how well it worked, but all the same, I did use both a light and a darker green. Now I'm going in and touching up some of the brown spots, especially around the eyes, because some of the green and white did leak out onto his eyelids and whatnot. Adding a couple more finishing touches and highlights. Then I started going in and giving some highlights and dark spots to the bark because realistically, bark is like multiple shades of brown. So I went in with some really light browns and whites just to kind of give shadows and highlights all around the tree. Now, this was also a time consuming part. Not as hard as painting the whole tree. Since you do already have a layer of paint, it goes on a lot easier. Some younger trees have some green hues, so you could add some green hues or even a few reds. It'll just give your tree a little bit more character. I know when I was younger, I would paint a lot of trees purple just because I thought that was fun. So yeah, get creative. Maybe your tree's really angry, so he has a flushed face. Now we're going to go in and add the pupils. I realized I had been referring to the eyes as pupils, where the pupils are always black. It's the irises that are different colors. So I apologize for past Brianna. I'm just not going to go back and record all of that to correct my error. But you know, I also gave him some little like white highlights in the eyes to make him look a little cuter. I went in and did even more highlights on the body. I realized my arm blocks half of this, so you're just gonna get a short little clip. For the apples, we're gonna take that same clay foam. Now, I would not recommend this brand of clay foam. For some reason, it made my hands itchy, and afterwards, the apples kind of flattened out. But anyway, you make kind of a circular shape. I used this pen that I had to kind of give it like those 4 indentations at the bottom, which ended up not staying because, like I said, it sunk in. See, here are the flattened apples in all of their glory. I'm probably going to remake some of them. Some of them ended up staying fairly round. Now I'm just taking some green, orange, yellow, and red paint to kind of give this apple some different accents and blend those colors because we want some nice juicy red apples. But of course, to look nice and juicy red, we also need some other colors in that mix. But it is crucial you use the clay foam because otherwise the apples will be way too heavy for the tree. I would just recommend looking into a different brand. I have gotten the brand that's at Michael's before and I really liked that, but I was in a pinch, so I just ordered the one off of Amazon. So just don't get that brand. Just as a heads up, the bottom of the apple didn't dry super well, so you might want to try and flip it over when you're waiting for the clay to kind of form a more hardened surface area. Now I feel like I'm just spitting out random words. I apologize. Also, sorry that this shot's a little blurry. I think I was just moving the apple too much. Now to add on the leaves. For this, I just had some green like foliage, fake plants lying around, so I just cut that up and I'm literally just sticking it into the foam of the noodles. You could glue it down, but like I said, I feel like the best glue for this would be hot glue, but that just melts the noodles, so I figured this would be the easiest way to just cut it and stick it because most of these fake flowers have a wire base and will just go straight through the noodle. For the apples, I'm doing the same thing. I'm literally just sticking them through the wire. You could also add a little glue, but I'm thinking I might want to reuse these leaves for another project in the future, so I'm not gluing them down. And this is the final look. I'm really happy with how he turned out. He was actually featured in a little Wizard of Oz photo shoot, and he's going to be great for trunk or treating. Thanks so much for watching. This is Brianna signing off.